Come on. Good morning, everybody. I'd say if I jump up and down on this stage, I will trip up at least once today. How's everybody feeling this morning? Good? Who's, anybody hungover? No? Okay. No one wanted to put their hands up at all. Good morning. So welcome to day 2. This morning we have an absolutely jam-packed schedule to get through this morning with some amazing speakers carrying on our themes that of course we started yesterday. So if I can have, there it is, good. So, but we're going to jump straight into Slido. So unlock your phones and prepare, because it's morning and I think you're all awake. So we're going to start with a quiz this morning, just to see who is awake. And it is a quiz to get you thinking about the day and just to kind of get your brains in gear. So I have a riddle for you. And the riddle is, a bear goes for a walk. The bear will walk 1 mile to the south. He will then walk 1 mile to the east. He will then walk 1 mile to the north. If we can flip into Slido. Once the bear has finished walking, he will be back to where he started. So he's walked south, east, north, 1 mile. My question for you is, what color is the bear? And I will hide the results so there's no cheating. You can just free type into the answer. There's 6 people have answered so far. So the bear has gone for a walk. He's walked 1 mile to the south, 1 mile to the east, 1 mile to the north, and he's ended up exactly where he started. What color is the bear? All right, 50 people. Let's see who has got the answer correct. Correct, everybody who wrote white, congratulations. That is the correct answer. It is a polar bear. Because if the polar bear starts at the North Pole and walks 1 mile to the south, 1 mile to the east, and 1 mile to the north, he'll end back up at the North Pole. The compass has got to be really, really accurate with only a mile. So yes, so it is white. That is, so well done for those. There is no bear. This is not kind of some kind of weird sort of questionnaire this morning. Lazy bear, tired bear, very good. All right, well, thank you very much for for doing that. So, yep, so let's jump back into the presentation. So well done for everybody there. Just flip through these. And that's it. So have a fantastic day this morning. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker of the day. Please welcome Florian to the stage.
Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, BIM evangelists here in the room and internationally. My name is Florian Kaiser. I am representing a consulting company, Wieselhuber and Partner, Munich-based. I'm in the business since 18 years, doing strategic work and development for construction-related companies, especially German-owned, family-owned companies. I want today give you a brief overview of the possible future outlook to the value chain we developed based from lots of talks and research within the last years in strategic development. But first of all, why are we here? Our sector we represent here has a huge impact on sustainability. Steen and Carl yesterday mentioned some of these figures. 6% of the worldwide CO2 footprint is caused by cement production. 35% of German energy consumption and roughly 30% of the CO2 emissions account to buildings from construction and the lifetime. And 90% of the material resource is construction related. And finally, 52% of the waste volume is construction related. So all these figures show the high importance of our sector, of construction sector, of design of construction, and sustainability leverage we have here, we can address. So what does it mean for us? It's us. It's not the others, it's us. We have to address it, we have to think in that. We have to develop our value chain towards more sustainable, resource-efficient and smart material decision, even before the construction phase, to thoroughly design and optimize material usage. For example, maybe once in a while use more timber compared to cement. Xella might hate me for that, but okay. Optimize utilization in terms of comprehensive and early optimization of life cycle energy and total cost of ownership or total resource of ownership. And finally, to keep it closed, to lower that figure here, material recycling, to have a cradle-to-cradle recycling on the same level, not like a downcycling to demolish a building and then to use it to dump it somewhere, but to really reuse the material. So all that is the reason why we are talking here about sustainability. And let me show you an idea of a future value chain. I want to highlight the various players related to the value chain, from investor to designer, over contractor to facility management. What is the impact? How do these representatives of our value chain have to adjust, have to adapt? And maybe it's an idea of a future picture. Some of this already is foreseeable and is developing. Some might sound like science fiction still. Let's go through investors tomorrow. They are strongly sustainability and total cost of ownership driven. They consider the life cycle value of the building. All these are arguments they have to use to address, to sell their property, to sell their investment. They will, even more than today, ask for early integrated digital planning to reduce and cost and risk of realization and time risks. They want to use early comprehensive simulations to foster sales, to foster marketing, even before the final design decisions are made, to play around with possible users, how the object should be developed. Designers, the question with designers is, architects, what is their future role in terms of BIM? Will they be the designer of the past, or will they gain or adopt a role of a central coordinator? Yesterday we talked about BIM coordinators. Possibly that's a new kind of business model for the designer, not just to take care of the architectural look of a building and development, but even for the whole coordination. We will see. With help of digital planning, the designer might be even more able than today to achieve a high level of detail and optimization very early in the process. So to have all the technical systems within a building optimized to the later on usage. For the designer, it will be hard to adjust to their new role and qualifications. Yesterday we heard about examples how architectural organizations adjust, and it's about qualification, to develop the qualification of the people. Sorry, I'm a little bit. We expect that concept and design are supported by artificial intelligence, such as solution libraries and easy-to-use configurations that might help the designer, the architect to, yesterday we saw from, I think it was Rumble. The example where concepts were kind of artificial intelligence supported, developed by the system. And the design of the building and the technical solutions might be more synchronized in the future, as the designer will be more in touch with the technical equipment of the building, the technical facilities, the technical systems of the building. Let's turn what the implication will be for the industry. The digital value chain is a great opportunity for the industry to gain access to their target groups, such as designers, such as investors. But they have to provide, it's intentionally mentioned real digital application and design support. They have to really address the needs, the value generation for their target groups. Industry might increase to benefit from their market access. They might increase their portfolio, go more in system solutions to increase interfaces, which makes it more attractive for the designer and the contractor. So offering more prefabricated systems, comprehensive solutions. Configuration and off-site pre-assembly, modular systems, just-in-time delivered, just-in-time produced will be the rule. The question is if you think a digital value chain, BIM, to the end, it might be even possible that some system managing the construction site will give the industry, the producer of the products, the signals for their production. I think yesterday we talked about no inventory at the industry. The industry gets a signal, when is a product needed, it's just in time and just in sequence produced and delivered to the construction site. This will have a tremendous impact on the strategic setup of the industry. At the same time, it's a huge opportunity to adjust to that. Distributors. When you talk to distributors today, and just like 4 eyes, closed doors, they commit that they might lose up to 40% of their sales. They might lose it to the industry direct, they might lose it to new competitors, they might lose it to direct platform sales. Most of the distributors don't yet have an answer to that challenge. They're right now thinking what to do, and some of them like 5 years ago, I should have sold my business because I don't really have a strategic answer how to cope with that loss. They address high performance processes. They address their data model, which is crucial. The underlying data model is crucial for the distributor. So to establish maximum or optimal process performance. But it's kind of development in the historic defined orientation. So it's not real improvement. They are just fixing what is there. They would be if they have a new role in terms of services and maybe BIM support, planning, pre-assembly of modules, pre-configuration. So the distributor might develop more towards the contractor direction. But we will see. Part of it will be close cooperation with platforms, as platforms, I expect, will be the main competitor of the distributor in the future. Let's look on the contractor. From empirical experience, we have the impression that in the future there might be contractors which are either digital elite or digital losers. The industrialization and modularization will change the way they can create value. Supplementary claims most likely won't work in the future because with a BIM model, with a thoroughly digital planned site, there's pretty much no way for a contractor to use supplementary claims as a business model. It's a business model of the past. So the contractor really has to adjust. Besides all the digital interfaces and digital integration in his workflow, which is a big burden for him. Finally, the facility management. Facility management and operators will be much earlier part of the investment process. Together with the designer and maybe even with the contractor, being on one planning team and really together to optimize how a building, how an investment should work and what's the total cost and the lifetime value creation of a building. Sure, they demand digital building documentation, as it's the case already today. Now let's look on the platforms. The platforms we see today, they will develop. I'm absolutely sure that even BIMobject as an established standard today will look way different in 5 years down the road. They will offer configuration tools, optimized support, maybe artificial intelligence supported. They will offer technical planning. They will have a much closer relation to sales, to actual distribution than today. I'm absolutely sure that they will evolve towards kind of, let's call it, trading platforms. They will have a close connection, though, with the industry. They will have a close connection with logistics of the industry. And at the same time, it's a very attractive, let's call it a sales lever for the industry to cooperate with platforms closely. I'm not sure where it will lead. It was interesting to see on the Bau Digital what the former, I called it the former Standard Heinze in Germany, how they develop. They seem to have a hard time to cope up with other platforms. It will be interesting to see these platforms evolving. And the question is now, that might be a picture of the future, but what's now today, how can BIM be implemented? How does successful BIM implementation work? What we did, we made recently a study because we wanted to know how can BIM be implemented efficiently. So we looked on these aspects from strategy to organization, resource, competencies, qualification, culture, and cooperation network. And our question was, is there like a pattern you have to adopt if you want to implement BIM successfully? Can you focus on some of these dimensions, or is there a special way to address it? And I brought you some key results from our study. We talked to 200 players or 200 organizations within the construction industry. And what is striking, because it was not so 2 years ago, the relevance of BIM is consensus. And I was very happy because like 2-3 years, it was always a discussion, will BIM come or is it relevant? But now it's like, let's not talk about BIM in the future, it will be the future. Success in BIM implementation is solely based on addressing all these 6 dimensions. There's no way that you can like make a shortcut, no shortcuts feasible. You have to address all 6 of them. What is striking in terms of does BIM provide any value? The companies that implement BIM thoroughly realize less planning risks, up to 50% higher efficiency in their processes, and more successful acquisition with the argument, I'm able to BIM. And that's striking. That's the reason why when you're going to go back to your company, we need to develop BIM, we have to integrate BIM in our strategy. That's the reason why. Nevertheless, consequent implementation and evolution towards BIM is only part of strategy within a rather small percentage of organizations. That means that's just like around 10% of the companies that really think BIM in a thoroughly way, in a comprehensive way. Some of the companies are still in the orientation phase. They are still like in a shock modus. They have accepted the relevance of BIM, but they are looking for help and guidance. And I think all of us here in the room are part of this deal to help them. And finally, some of the companies are really fast forward modus in BIM, but some are totally lost and are well behind. And I think that's all what we have to address to help the industry, develop towards digital integrated planning, to BIM, to, as I started, to foster sustainability and to reduce our impact on the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So thank you, Florian, for that starting talk. At that you would have got just a few items of swag, as we call it, this year. We really aim to obviously reduce the amount of waste in this event. So the 3 items that we picked for you this year, the books are made from a paper factory in Germany. The pens are, I think they're from Southern Europe. And the bottles, which you got, are made from 100% recycled plastic. And I really like these because the wonderful thing is, if you haven't noticed, you can take the whole top off and it becomes a water glass. So it's great, you can use it all the time. And these come from the Netherlands, and the company Dopper used this fantastic hashtag, which is tap water everywhere. Go and have a look at it on Twitter, there's some really interesting posts. The company, and the reason that we chose to buy them, get them from Dopper, is they're a cradle-to-cradle company. So they really look after materials and resourcing kind of from its source, and then think about how they dispose of everything within the factory. They're a fantastically interesting organisation, and they give a lot of their money back to water projects all around the world. So they don't just take it and use it as a profit. So they're really good to check out. Another really interesting company they're going to start teaming up with, and they haven't made their first bottle yet, and hopefully you have heard about this project, is the Ocean Cleanup Project. If you guys don't know what this is, go and check it out. It's a startup. Oh, the video's not playing. Hold on. Oh no. I'll leave it on here. The idea is they're another, of course, Dutch kind of startup, crazy company where the idea is they're going to start taking some of the plastic, and any plastic that they're going to start finding in the waters around the North Sea, they're going to start creating these bottles with that plastic. A lot of the waste is from us, so it's really looking forward to seeing that project come towards the end. So support Dopper, great company, and go and check out Ocean Cleanup if you haven't done already. Really fantastic innovations coming from them. Oh, gone too far again. So our next speaker has flown all the way from Canada and also has one of the most fantastic moustaches that I've ever seen. Please give a very warm welcome to Stéphane.
Thank you. Good morning. So education. We're learning about technological change and lots of new things and lots of information, and you have to keep seeing what's going on. So I'm going to talk to you specifically about the digitalization of AEC continuing education. So that's the field we're here. And we are talking, unfortunately, my experience is mostly Canada and the USA, where we're leaders. We're looking at Europe, but it's more fragmented and a little bit more complicated. In North America, there are requirements for education in the AEC field. And it's often regulatory. Architects, 45 out of 50 US states and all Canadian provinces have a mandatory requirement for a certain amount of education in order to maintain their license. Engineers, interior designers, landscape architects, every year we're getting more and more professions adding them. We also get requirements for association. An example is the American Institute of Architects. Another example would be LEED. If you're a LEED professional, in order to maintain your certification, you have to do a certain amount of education every year in order to keep that certification up to date. And that makes sense because things keep changing. Because why are there requirements? Well, obviously there's technological change. We've talked about this a lot today, yesterday. BIM, depending on how you define it, has been around in some form or another. It talked about since the 70s. But 20 years ago, when my partner and I started this company to do education online, there was no BIM. So it's a whole new concept that's come in, a whole new way of doing things. And it's, as you heard, it is the future where you bring everything together. And because you have technological change and things keep changing, it's important to connect all these things together. You have to understand how to use it. You also get societal change. That's happening all the time. Now we worry about gender-neutral washrooms because we have societal change about trying to accept different choices in gender. Whether you think that's right or wrong is a debate you can have, but it's happening, and so we're designing around that. We used to design big open places for people to get together, and then some crazy person decided it was a good idea to drive a truck through that and kill a bunch of people. So now we have lots of barriers to prevent vehicles, and we design differently because of that, the whole concept of open space. So society changes what we do, and it's not just a matter of noticing the change, it's understanding it, because as a designer, you can't be an expert in all those areas all the time. Safety. We are now here, and it's nice to see everybody here, but a lot of people are concerned about this virus that's going around. So you're seeing dispensers around for antibacterial stuff being spread around. So that can affect things. We were walking earlier, Jeff and I, in an area that was built probably a couple hundred years ago, and you could see the railing was originally this high, and they had welded on an additional railing this high, because we know that you want, for safety now, we have standards where you have to have railings at a certain height so you don't fall over, which is a nice thing. And finally, you need education for credibility. And if governments don't see that professionals are ensuring that the design keeps up with the changes and is paying attention, then they're going to want to be involved, which is why you're often seeing professional organizations being the ones to bring the education, because they want to get ahead of it, because they feel, and I think it's fairly valid, that often governments don't do a very good job of creating those standards. It's better for those who understand the business to manage, ensure that people keep up with it. So in North America anyway, most of the education in the AEC field comes from building product manufacturers. And there's an inherent conflict of interest there, obviously, because what manufacturers want to do is sell product. But it also makes sense because who else understands the technology behind these products better than the manufacturers? They spend all their time developing it. And if you're a leader, it makes total sense that you would become a leader in educating people, because you will benefit if you are a leader in the technology as well. And so that's where we come in to help develop courses that meet the requirements, because there are standards that have to be met, and you have to ensure that the education that is created is going to be credible. So courses generally don't talk about products. In most jurisdictions, that's against the rules. But again, if you're the leader in a technology and you are sponsoring the course, it makes sense that somebody's going to want to talk to you about it afterwards. So if it's well done, marketing is education. I mean, that's the whole definition. You want people to purchase products and services because you know that you're selling something that's superior or better priced or better suited for the purpose. Whatever it is, if your customer doesn't understand it, then they will never buy it. And so marketing is by definition education if it's done well. If it's done poorly, it's misinformation. But you must educate. There's different ways of doing it. And you have structured education and you have unstructured education, and marketing fits in there. So let's talk about technological change, because that's driving so much right now. You've probably all seen some version of this, which shows how much faster. This is for 25% of the population in the US adapting to a new technology. So you can no longer learn a skill for the rest of your life. What you know today is not valid for tomorrow. And so when you are trained and you become an architect or an engineer, interior designer, well, you may not have learned about green roofs because they weren't very important at the time. Or LEED was not an issue when you were first graduated, but now everybody wants to have a LEED certified building. So the key is the need for education is going to keep coming, and it's going to keep growing, and we're going to have to learn faster and faster. It seems every year I'm learning to use a new app on my phone, or they change drastically how my app works, or my app becomes irrelevant. Do you think Facebook is important for social media? If you have young kids, they're using TikTok. You ever heard of TikTok? No. I've heard of it. I still don't know how to use it. I got to take a look at it at some point because I've seen people using it. So what's the motivation why people take education? Well, it would seem obvious, right, to keep up to things. But actually, the requirement is 65% of the reasons, according to a survey of our own users. It's a little cynical, but you know, we all get busy. We know we're supposed to keep up with things. We know we're supposed to learn and go and look at something, but we have a contract to finish. We have a project we have to work on. So the requirements are important. And if you are in a jurisdiction that does not have a requirement for education, I would suggest you encourage your jurisdiction to implement it. Because we all need a little push to do what needs to be done. Now, I fully admit this 65% again is based on people in North America who are using our stuff. Maybe in Europe, you guys are all much more motivated to learn on your own. That's very possible. But it still doesn't hurt to push and to ensure people have that education. So let's talk about the terminology in education. There are two types. We have live learning. Live learning is what we're doing right now. It's typically classroom. Synchronous is a better term for it. Often webinars are included in here. Now, webinars are included in here even though some people might say it's distance learning because the people are at a distance. But generally, it's been included, at least in North America, under live learning because it is interactive. It's a classroom. You're just a little further removed from the instructor, if you will. Distance learning is asynchronous. Traditionally, a long time ago, it was correspondence courses, or in the AEC field, often it was read for credit for a magazine. It still exists. And a lot of it has gone online. And that was the basis of the business when Jeff and I started this 20 years ago. And you also have unstructured education, which is very important. It's what you do when you're talking in the hallway afterwards with somebody and asking questions, or when you walk around and notice and learn things, or maybe you just read an article somewhere or have a chat with some. So it's also very important. But this is very difficult to measure. And when it comes to ensuring that people keep up and know what they're doing and maintain certification, you can't count on unstructured education. You have to have a way of measuring it. And as it is, the distance learning has some weaknesses. At least online, there's ways of measuring a little bit more whether people are actually doing it by doing testing and ensuring they're actually paying some attention to it. You also, traditionally in the AEC field, I don't know if it's as common here, but in North America, live learning included lunch and learn, where manufacturers would go into the designer's office to provide a course. So technology, as we go online and we invent all these ways of learning, fits into the traditional model. So this is the traditional model of the three core. So pedagogical knowledge is how to teach and how we learn. And that's based on the psychology and understanding of how much time you can spend listening to a lecture, how much time it takes to absorb information. Content knowledge, well, that comes from the product experts, or the experts in whatever the matter is we're teaching. So in our case, we're talking about generally building product manufacturers. And technological knowledge, that's, well, it used to be things like blackboards, and now it's become computers, and it's become ways of using technology to further the pedagogical knowledge that we have and leverage it and make it stronger. So the key part is to try to find a way to put all these things together in the center in the most effective way. So with that, you know, people have played with all kinds of distance learning formats. We already talked about text. You can easily add audio, which is text, and somebody like my voice would be talking, and you wouldn't see me, you would just see the text that's on the screen. You can add video, which is very, very useful in terms of doing demonstrations where you want to show how something fits together or works. You have interactive. This is the ultimate from a pedagogical standpoint. When people are involved in the learning, they learn better. So interactive is very important. You can do a lot more of that online. And we've even played with something we call drip education, and that's where you give little bits. You know, the younger generation has problems with attention span. And we tried, and it wasn't very popular, but we tried a Twitter-based course where you would feed on a daily basis bits of a course. You can do that through email. You could do that through social media. You know, we've played with podcasts. We've played with HTML5, all kinds of things. And what's the most popular format, no matter what we try? PDFs. 73%. And that's because we say that not because we have more PDFs, because we do have more PDFs, but when we put them together and we put different formats together and we let people choose, 73% of the time right now, they're picking PDFs. Why? Because it's faster to read information than to listen to me speaking. By the time I finished that sentence, you'd probably read that. You could have read it 2 or 3 times. And it's true. This disadvantage of videos is that you have to go through the whole video from beginning to end. You can't skip the part you already know. You can't skim parts you sort of know. You can't go back and forth. And people, unfortunately, as professionals, are in a hurry. We're all stressed. We don't have enough time. And so taking courses quickly is important to people. And it's different from the very structured university education where we control all aspects of the educational process. As people who deliver education to the professionals, we can't force them to take the better education, which is frustrating sometimes. Creating the interactive courses are not as popular because they take more time. They could be more fun, but still that's the challenge. Don't underestimate live learning. It's still popular. We are human beings. Remember, we're supposed to fit the technology to the people, not the people to the technology. You all came here. You could have watched it live, but you came here. Because sometimes there's advantages. For some people, it's just a preferred way of learning. They enjoy it better, they do better when they're live. For others, being forced to be somewhere, if you try to leave right now, it's going to be a little awkward because I'm going to see you, and so you'll stay here anyway. There are less distractions. I don't know if you ever tried to do a webinar in your office, and then as you're doing a webinar, your phone bings, so you look at it and you stop paying attention because nobody sees you looking at your phone, or somebody walks into your office to ask you a question, but the webinar keeps going. That's why personally I think webinar is the worst of all forms of education. People disagree with me on that, but I think it is an online course, but that you can't pause and you have to take at a specific date and time. Well, once you come to a place then where you have no distraction, but if you want to do something online, something which you can pause and take when you have the time, seems like a much better use of technology if that's what you're going to use. People like live learning because they like a change of pace. Sorry, it's cynical, but it's true. Lower effort. The reality is when a course is being given, people can sit and work on their phone and not pay any attention, and they'll get credit just for showing up. And in fact, we've learned that in some professional designers' offices, I won't even name a profession, the people get their name, who are senior in a company, get their name put on the list of attendees and they never even walk in. And the other popular reason for live learning is you get a free lunch in a lot of cases. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is just to say that people have different ways. This is the called learning styles, and people have different ways of learning. And what's important is to not try to teach everybody the same way. We are not all the same people. We are not the same brains. We don't have the same way of doing it. You came here because you enjoy being live or it works for you. Some people will enjoy playing the videos back later. Some people will want to read. You have to have all the different ways because people are different and you have to make sure everybody has different ways of learning. And one last quick slide on technology. There is a technological model called SCORM, Shareable Content Object Reference Model, in case you're interested. Just like there's BIM for transferring information, SCORM was a 1997 project, the US Department, and the idea is you distribute learning content for use by a learning management system. And you can also share data between LMSs in terms of scores and things like that. There's versions 1.1 and 1.2. We're currently mostly using 1.3 from 2004 because it's fine. There are other words you might hear, XAPI, Experience API, Tin Can, that are coming. But because SCORM 1.3 is working really well, that's what people generally use. Although not as much as you might think, because people tend to have their own LMSs. They're not looking to share education. It's not like the military, who invented SCORM, where they want different departments to be able to teach the same content in a consistent way. So education is the passport to the future. So tomorrow belongs for those who prepare for it today. And intellectual growth should commence at birth and cease only at death. It's an ongoing process, and we all have a part not just in learning ourselves, but making sure that others learn what we do and keep evolving as the pace of change gets faster and faster. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Stéphane. Really interesting there. I recently read a blog about the 5-hour. We'll talk about it during the 5-hour-a-week theory, which look like Jeff Bezos and the guys at Microsoft, a lot of the CEOs do, where they have 5 hours a week of learning, 1 hour a day. They try and read something or do something to learn, and it's very fantastic. So it's nearly Easter time, so what a better time to talk to you about Christmas. The reason I'm talking to you about Christmas is actually to carry on the sustainability theme. So like every single company in the world, we have a Christmas party for the staff. We have one here in Malmö. At Christmas, we were about 51 people. And usually at Christmas time, we kind of choose whether to have the vegetarian option. So we went and explored this and kind of had a discussion before Christmas, and we looked at what the CO2 output is for eating a meal. So we did some investigations, and we used publicly available website in Sweden, and we worked out that so if we had the meat menu, it would be 27 kilograms of CO2 per kilo of product, and 5 kilos of CO2 if we're veggie. So usually in our office, we have 5 vegetarians and 46 people eating meat. And that's usually what would happen. We'd go and people would say, do you want the vegetarian option? And yeah, people go, yes, please, or no, thank you. So this time, we thought we'd ask it the other way around. We are going to serve vegetarian food, and you have to opt in for meat instead. So we were 46 to 5. When we sent out the email, the numbers switched. 39 people accepted the vegetarian meal because it was a great restaurant, and only 12 people accepted the meat instead. So we flipped it. And by doing that, at Christmas, we saved 59% of our CO2 at Christmas. So it's these little things actually do make huge, huge differences. So like for your next Christmas party at work, try that. It does make a big difference in your CO2 output, because having vegetarian food, as we discussed yesterday on the charts, meat production does create a huge amount of CO2 output, and at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with vegetarian food. I personally love it, and if you go to the right restaurants, sometimes it's even better than the meat. So try that yourselves this Christmas, or for your next Christmas, for your next office party. My next guest. You hopefully have seen some of his videos on YouTube. It's Fred from the B1M.
Okay, cheers. Morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Come on, they call this Super Tuesday. How are you all doing? Excellent. So this morning, I don't want to give you a presentation. I just want to tell you a story. And it's my story, but I promise it's not too boring. When I was a boy, I loved building things. I used to love going to work with my dad and seeing massive machines and excavators. I used to build these elaborate Lego cities that I kept under my bed. One time I used the scaffold poles that the guys who were painting our house with had left on the grass over the weekend to build a den in our garden. Looking back, incredibly dangerous, bit of a stupid thing to do. But I guess I've always understood the impact and the power of construction to enable other things, whether that's having fun, winning the war of the garden with my sisters, or changing the world. And as I grew up, I pursued a career in construction, and I came into the only industry I've ever wanted to work in, the industry I wanted to work in all my life. But when I got here, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I saw people fighting with each other. I saw confrontation within project teams, the same team of people trying to build the same building, the same structure, the same piece of infrastructure at the end of the day. I saw all the stuff you're familiar with, risk transfer, ridiculously low or non-existent margins. I saw people who'd learned to survive in the system rather than thrive in it. They just learnt to surf through the rubbish that surrounds people every day. And when you ask them, why do they love construction? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Why do you do what you do? They couldn't even give you an answer. And it's not an easy thing for me to say in a room for people like this and with a live stream going on, but I don't mind saying that left me feeling pretty depressed. And I actually looked at ways of leaving the construction industry altogether, only briefly, but I looked at leaving. There are many people like me in that place right now. Good people, talented people who we are losing in this industry. Ultimately, that love of construction in that little boy I described at the start of the story was too strong, and I decided to stay. I decided to make this industry better, to change it, to improve it, and to inspire more people in the rest of the world to come into our great sector. And I started putting some of the things that inspired me on YouTube in my spare time after work, and a few people watched them. And then after a while, quite a lot of people watched them. And that channel, the B1M that I created, is now the world's largest, most subscribed to YouTube channel for architecture and construction, with almost 1 million people subscribed and signed up to it. You see, the incredible people in this room shape our world. You work in an incredible industry that touches the lives of every child, every adult, and every elderly person in every corner of this planet. The problem we have is that most people outside of rooms like this don't know about the work that we do. They don't see this industry as we see it. They don't see the great people, the cutting edge technology we've seen over the last 2 days, the decisions being made that shape not just our cities, but our homes, the impact that we are having on climate change, and the power that we possess to help turn that tide. Now, my mission in life is a really, really simple one. I love construction, and I want the whole world to love it too. What this industry does, and the output of this industry, has never been more important. For the entirety of human history up to this point in time, the output of this industry and what it does now seriously matters. Not to be too dramatic, but we're kind of talking about the extinction of the human race if we don't get this right. Cheery for a Tuesday morning, isn't it? But it's that serious. If we don't get this right, if we don't convince not the people in these rooms, but the majority of our industry to change what they're doing and work in a better, more sustainable way, if we don't tell the world that this is a great place to come and work, we're not going to get anywhere. And everything we've heard over the last 2 days is going to be for nothing. The problem we've got at the moment in construction is that we don't really communicate very well. We have events, we have industry press, we do a bit of social media, we do a bit of website stuff, but mostly we talk internally to each other within this industry. No one's really taken construction and put it in a consumable, engaging format for the mainstream and presented it to the world. Conversely, the world we now live in is social media rich, 24-hour news cycle driven, always on, media rich world. And construction has not competed in that space. Other industries are more attractive, they're sexier. People want to go into politics, banking, law, finance. Young people today want to be NFL superstars or Instagram influencers. Construction is seen as the failure route. It's seen as where you go if you're not that clever. Construction hasn't competed in that space. The fact is, the way people consume information today has changed. There's been a huge shift from print to digital over the last 2 decades, as we all know, but within digital, there's been a profound shift towards online streamed video, whether that's YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, any of the other stuff you may watch. Some statistics for you. To watch everything uploaded to YouTube just today would take you 65 years of continuous viewing. No sleep, no food, no life, no friends. More people watch YouTube during prime time in the United States than the 10 broadcast primetime shows, the top 10 broadcast primetime shows put together. Facebook are getting 8 billion video views every day. There are only 7 billion people on Earth, from newborn babies to those without internet access. YouTube's now the world's second largest website after Google, and a lot of YouTube videos you'll see appear in Google search results. this is where people go to find information. I can see a lot of people looking at this graph. I did tweet this a few weeks back. It's very interesting to zoom in and have a look. Some of the websites on here are completely inappropriate to talk about at a BIMobject's live event, but do go on there and have a look. And the big thing that the social media platforms don't tell you, but that really drove what I did, is that social media will promote video content over all other types of content. So a native video file uploaded to Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram will be served in front of a text post, an image post, or a link, or God forbid, a link to another social network. They really don't like it when you do that. And that's really what grew what I did. You know, I knew, going back to that small boy at the start of the story who loved construction, I knew there was this amazing industry out there that was misunderstood, that had to be seen to be believed, that was incredibly visual. I knew there were those social media platforms celebrating video, enabling people to talk to the whole world for free. I put the two together, and that's how the B1M channel was born. I'm proud to say that's now, as I said, world's largest, most subscribed to YouTube channel for construction. And I'm very proud that we've now got over 11 million people every single month tuning in to watch our content worldwide. YouTube themselves have had a big shift recently. They saw a lot of what was going on with Cambridge Analytica and the loss of trust in Facebook. And they said, you know what, we need to stand for something. We don't want to be just about cats and Kim Kardashian. We want to be about education and social value content. And they really started celebrating educational channels, of which we were one. And the B1M was named Creator on the Rise out of all 500 million YouTube channels on planet Earth, which was great for me. Awesome for that little boy that loves construction, but really good for our industry. You know, we had a major social network standing up and saying, we don't want dogs on trampolines or people falling over into paddling pools, as good as that stuff is. We want social value content. We want stories about how we can make our world better, that inspire people on a massive level. I'm going to show you a short preview now, a social media trailer for one of our documentaries about how the work that you're doing, how construction technology can really help support and tackle the climate crisis.
For thousands of years, our planet has enabled and nurtured our growing civilizations. Throughout the ages, our settlements have existed in balance with the natural world that surrounds us, protecting us from the elements, while enabling our societies to thrive. But now, in the space of just one human lifetime, all that has changed. The extent of our urban development has reached extreme levels, and our buildings now contribute more than 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Our actions are causing dramatic and irreversible changes to the planet that we call home. The critical links between ecosystems are being broken. But we have the power to turn this tide. We have the ability to limit the impact of the structures we build and to help them support rather than destroy our planet. The construction industry can make the difference, and with the help of new cutting-edge technology placed into the hands of billions, we can save our planet for future generations.
So that's just one example of a trailer for one of our films, but really what we're about is not about the process or the bureaucracy or the PowerPoint presentation packed with bullet points and too much text. We're about the heart. If we can engage people and appeal to their passion and their belief, that's what it's all about. I think for every number and statistic I've put up here today, every bit of science that's gone behind what we do, putting that passion at the core is what's been most successful for us. I'm going to get you to show the next video now, which kind of goes to the heart of everything I believe in.
Look at these constructions, touching and moulding our lives. To work here is to shape, to influence, to impact. To work here is to make a difference. To work here is to embrace the cutting edge every day. To work here is to innovate, to imagine, to dream, to solve, to make it happen. This is a sector that doesn't shout about itself, that isn't good at celebrating what it does, that many of the talented and best young people don't even notice. This is what happens when you share knowledge, expertise, and best practice with a mass audience in the world's most important industry. This is what happens when you show construction at its best to millions. This is what happens when you stop telling and start compelling. This is what happens when you stop boring and start engaging. This is what happens when you show people how great construction really is and what it can be. This is the B1M.
So just going back to the start of our story, that little boy that I told you about right at the beginning is standing before you now, and he still lives in here, still loves building things, still loves construction. He isn't doing this for revenue, turnover, the team of 11 people we employ, or any of the stuff that goes with this, the great stats and the minor fame. He's doing it because I want people in the industry to remember why they came into this industry, to remember the impact they have. I'm doing it because I think this industry can make a huge difference on how we sustain ourselves on this planet. I'm doing it for the millions of other little boys and girls out there who love building things, who we want to come into this industry to help build a better world. I love construction. I'm determined to get the whole world to love it too. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Wow, a fantastic story, Fred. Thank you so much for that. And you know, a lot of us thinking about what you said. And I'm not an architect anymore, and I also work in tech. And yeah, great story. And we look forward to seeing more videos coming out shortly. Talking about saving the planet, of course, and being near extinction brings us on to talk very quickly about the oceans. I mentioned yesterday about keeping things simple and us trying to understand and comprehend what we're doing wrong and what kind of impact it's having. And a lot of time people talk about the oceans are getting warmer. And again, this is another thing which, like I talked about yesterday with the 1.3 degrees of the Earth warming up over 140 odd years, we have another one, and that is basically the amount of heat that we're dumping into the ocean. And someone described it very apocalyptically as 5 atomic bombs of heat goes into the ocean per second. Now that, again, is a crazy statistic that you can't really comprehend and think about, because I don't think anyone here has felt the heat of an atomic bomb because you're here. So we don't really understand what that really is. So we try to kind of discuss it and kind of think about a way. And most of us use hair dryers. I used one this morning to dry my hair. And basically, to comprehend that into hair dryers, basically every single person in the world would have to drop and hold 100 hair dryers per second of heat over the ocean. That's how much heat we are pushing into the oceans per second. It's 100 for every single person on the planet. And that's 100 every time. So you're going to run out of hands really quite quickly. So again, heating up the oceans and the world heating up, these are huge kind of like massive amounts of energy that we are pumping in. And as an industry, we are absolutely part of that. But this is hopefully another kind of nicer, smaller breakdown, because we all understand how hot a hairdryer is when we put it on setting 3 instead of setting 2 on our heads. Our next talk is from two people just down the road in Lund. Please welcome to the stage from Veidekke, Emil and Joakim.
Thank you, Matthew, and good morning. I'm Joakim, that's Emil, for those of you who wonder. We are here representing a Scandinavian contractor and business or property developer called Veidekke. We are around 8,400 employees, operates in Norway, Sweden and Denmark. We're here to talk about what we call data-driven sustainability. And I guess that's what you need to know about us before we get started.
So it's always nice to follow Fred with a nice presentation, but we have memes. We're going to start with a few motivators on why we as a company need to think about sustainability. Besides the fact that climate change is chasing us down and we're probably going to die. But otherwise, we have a few motivators for us as a company.
The most obvious one is maybe this one. The Sustainable Development Goals we heard a lot about from UN the last couple of days. But what you haven't heard is the news from last week maybe, that we actually got the first verdict in this matter. It was the third runway of Heathrow Airport who got in an appeal court blocked just on environmental goals. And that's the first time we see the agreement from Paris actually is taken into account. And I don't think it's the last one.
But if we move to a more national level, we in Sweden actually in 2022, we will have a government mandate from the government entity called Boverket that we will have to declare the CO2 emissions from all our new buildings and constructions. As you can see here, it's only A1, A2, A3. And if you're not familiar with this concept, it's basically the building materials, transport and production of the things that we put in our building. So it's actually you as manufacturers that are responsible for this data. But we as a construction company needs to report it into the government. And that's only the start of it. We will continue down the whole construction process, but this is in 2022.
So here in the Malmö region, it's a lot of different players that don't think that the national mandates are enough. So they created a geographical game plan which they call LFM 30, which takes the agenda 2030 and makes it into more concrete actions. And as of today, there's around 300 different players involved and stand behind these initiatives. And it spans from, it's not only the process of the buildings, like from very early design to the operation, but it also includes regulations and initiatives around business model, incentives, and how you collaborate in the projects. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Whoa, close one.
It's fine. All right. And there's another big motivator that we see now is sustainability awareness. And we see in research articles, newspaper articles, and we see a lot of new mentions of climate change. And I think it's like a hockey club graph if you look back a few years. And of course, we have the Greta Thunberg effect that we're very proud of in Sweden, that everyone is more climate aware these days. But for us as a company, of course, we see that our customers are getting more sustainability aware. And you can see that during this survey that two-thirds of customers are willing to pay more for sustainable products. And that's not only for a car, an electric car. I think that in the near future, we will have more demands from our customers as well. And as you can see here, 9 out of 10 of consumers expect businesses to do more than just turn a profit. They want to see that the companies that they buy from actually has a sustainable agenda. And moving on, I think that we as employees also are very aware of the climate change that is happening. And if you look at this study from the US, and I think that these numbers are higher here in Europe and in Scandinavia, nearly 30% of the respondents say that it will be a deal breaker. They will not start working for this company if they don't have a sustainable agenda. And nearly 70% of the respondents say that a strong sustainability agenda with the company will encourage them to stay for the long term. So I think we can all agree that sustainability awareness is a big player in the future for us as companies. So what's Veidekke doing? We have a few initiatives that we want to tell you about. And first of all, we have a project in Stockholm called Cederhusen. It's completely made out of wood, or actually, well, except for the groundwork. But we do CO2 calculations on this project with the help of software called OneClick's LCA. This is not the real number, by the way. But with the help of that, we can connect EPDs to our Revit objects, and we can calculate the CO2 output from the building quite easily. We started with the framework of the building, but we will move into the last design phase now and start doing that for the whole building. Ready?
Yep. If you look at your tags, name tags or badges, you see a little swan in the lower right corner. That's a swan. That's a Svanen. That's a Nordic eco-label. It's quite popular in consumer products, everything from shampoo to your dishwasher ingredients. But you could also do this for entire houses. Veidekke have been doing so since 2011, where we took a strategical decision in our sustainability strategy that all our self-developed houses, multifamily houses, should be rewarded or labeled with that eco label, which means that we take into everything from raw material to products to the end house for users. You take it into account when designing and choosing. This is the first electrical excavator in the world. It has a battery pack of 3.5 tons. It can store as roughly 5 times the energy as a Tesla Model 3. And we have had the first prototype since a little bit more than a year ago and uses a few of them right now at our sites. They can work for between 5 to 7 hours without requiring a recharge. So pretty good, actually. And for all these initiatives and a few other ones, we, for the second year in a row, we came up on the CDP's A-list for climate. So it's a non-profit organization that each year ranks 7,000 companies approximately. And if you are in the top 2% of what you're doing, you get onto the A-list. And Veidekke did that for the second year in a row. So what's the problem then? It seems like we have a lot of good initiatives around the globe, locally here in the region, and also within the company. It's 70%. 70% of the money we spend on our sites, we either do through material or for subs. So that's a huge part of our revenue that we control through that, for those two parts, which means that we can't own that part, but we need to be in control of that. And by doing so, we need to change the process. Today, it's really popular to make all decisions on site in the late stage of the project, but that's not going to work if we want to change these things.
Probably going to change sides.
Right.
Need to look at my notes. All right. So, as a building or construction company, we are actually responsible for the sustainability of our buildings. But I think we have to see that manufacturers are sustainable as well. So we need to see that data. And in the Cederhusen project that I mentioned, all that connection between the data and the Revit model is manual. So it takes a lot of time and effort. And as I said before, A1, A2, A3 is on the manufacturer side. And so that requires the manufacturers, you guys, to be transparent in your processes and actually share your data openly, both the product data and the environmental data. Because we, as a construction company, will also be accountable for what we put in our buildings. And then by extension, the manufacturers that provide us with their products will be accountable for their numbers. So in a not too distant future, we will actually stop using manufacturers who cannot provide us with proper EPDs. Or don't have low enough numbers in their EPDs.
But for those who are left, we really will require accurate and relevant data, because all our decisions are becoming more and more data-driven. Which means that we need the data to drive our processes forward, but also put them together in different dashboards to take decisions from managers, from procurement, from all the different areas. As a few examples of where we use it, we make predictive analytics, where we try to gather real-time data to make insights. We use simulation, especially in the design phase, for making different simulations from the building and how it could work and should work. Of course, predictions of different issues occurring during the erection of the building are extremely important to know in advance. Project risks is a huge thing we need to manage as a contractor to lower those risks. And optimization. Up till now, we've mostly been optimizing from cost and time. That's the most important parameters. But from now on, even the CO2 emissions will be extremely important. So CO2 in engineering will come into place, where we will need to evaluate both time and money, but also how does it affect the building and the CO2 impact if we change the structure of the building, we change the facade material, or we even get windows with better insulation value. And for doing so, I don't really see how we can control and analyze these things without having accurate data connected to the model.
So to sum up, we have a lot of expectations. We have from customers, employees, we have mandates, we have certifications that we wish to fulfill. And there's a few initiatives, but we really don't think that's enough, not nearly enough to make us truly sustainable. But to make that all feasible, we need a digital transformation. We need digital product data, we need BIM objects to make all this automatic, because we want to automatically be able to certify us as a Svanen house. We want to automatically comply to the government mandates. And that's really what it takes in the end, I think, to be truly, ultimately productive and effective in the building industry. Thank you very much.
I have gifts.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Very much, Emil and Joakim. That is it for right now this morning. We're going to have a short fika pause, as we say in... oh no, that's the wrong clicker. No wonder it's not clicking through. There we are, that's the one I want. We're going to have a quick pause. So we've had 4 great speakers. I encourage you, everybody, we've already had some questions. I encourage everybody to jump back into Slido, discuss what you've just seen, 4 really compelling talks, think up some questions and submit them. We might roll over some really interesting ones that were left over from yesterday. We've had something like, I think, 40, 50 questions in total coming in. So we're trying to get through them as much as we can and select them. So make sure you jump into Slido, #live, ask questions for the session later on. And we'll see you back here just before 11 o'clock. So in about 40 minutes, we'll get started again. So thank you very much. Okay, everybody, welcome back. I hope you've refilled and refueled. We've got a couple more speakers for now, and then we'll have the speakers panel a little bit later. So first of all, we're going to have, not on the agenda, another surprise presentation from one of the BLOXHUB teams. Please welcome to the stage the Modulo group. That way around.
Hi, I'm James. I'm an architect from HD Lab in Copenhagen. And this is my team from the ASE Hackathon in Copenhagen last week. And we're going to present today our hack. So, there are many companies in the world creating prefabricated timber and modular components. However, there are many problems with this process that we need to overcome. These problems include that it is time-consuming for architects to consider the dimensions of the modules late in the design process. Estimations and analysis often lead to changes that cost more as the project goes on. And there are a lack of connections between different softwares and different professionals. We identified these problems when talking to Cree, a timber component manufacturer, and they said that when they're contacted by an architect, that it takes too long to adapt the architect's design to the Cree system. This is so that they can give an estimated price and check the design feasibility. We believe that if we can make this process more efficient, we can design more sustainable buildings. For example, with the Cree system, you can cut the use of concrete by 2/3 and CO2 emissions by 80%. So, we have leveraged the vast amount of Revit and other BIM components on BIMobject.com to create a modular building design generator that links a parametric model in Grasshopper with a user interface in Revit. This allows an architect to design sustainable buildings with ease. We call this software Modulo, and it allows you to automate the design of modular buildings, to perform analysis and estimations early in the design process, including cost, CO2 emissions, and environmental simulations. And it acts as a bridge between Revit and Rhino with a convenient user interface. We will now give a short demo of the software. So you open the Modulo window in Revit. You get a couple of parameters, such as the floor height, the number of floors. And when we're happy with our design, we can click Generate to create a Revit model with all the correct modular components. We can also design with different building topologies. Next, we will try the linear block, which has its own unique parameters, such as the building length in modules. And again, we generate a construction detail ready Revit model that would take an engineer at Cree about 2 to 3 days in a matter of seconds. We can also design slightly more complex building topologies. Here we have the perimeter block with a courtyard in the center. And as you can see, there are different sort of depths in the floor slab, different depths in the floor plate. And this involves different connections between the slabs and columns. And lastly, we have a more experimental freeform topology that creates angled building from a user-drawn line in Rhino, which uses custom Cree components, as you can see, the slabs in the dark gray, that would have to be specially ordered from the manufacturer. As you can see right here. Okay, so our hopes for Modulo are to further develop the script to include generative design algorithms such as performance-based optimization and building simulation, to integrate other modular manufacturers other than Cree, and to scale the software to the needs of the industry so we can work on real projects with Modulo. Thank you from me and all the team.
So again, another amazing example. You guys worked amazingly hard for the 48 hours. And yeah, so I hear that you guys are now going to start doing this project with Cree to carry it forward in the coming kind of years. It'd be really interesting to see where you guys take this. Yeah. So you got big buy-in from them. And of course, you guys as manufacturers, you may see your BIM objects flying into this tool very, very soon to have all automated design. So again, guys, thank you very much. And we hope to see you at the hackathon next year again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Again, so I think touching again what we've discussed this morning, there are so many people who want to create and change these with these really exciting things. And it again is one of those wonderful reasons why we do support these sorts of activities. And yeah, I can see chats happening already with the product owners of BIMobject and that team about what we can do in the future. So next, I would like to invite up some more of my colleagues. I would like to welcome to the stage Bodil and Christophe.
Thank you very much. All right, hello everyone. My name is Christophe. I'm the VP of Growth here at BIMobject. And we are here to talk about insights. And we're here because both of us have a background in data. So I've been spending about 5 years counting crushed candies at King, doing data science.
Yeah. And hi, my name is Bodil Wicknertz. And I work as a product owner for BIM Analytics here at BIMobject. And I have a background in both BI, but also in the customer data platform. So I have a keen interest, and we talked a lot in the conference about the importance of data. But data to me only really becomes interesting when you can visualize it. Because once you visualize it, you can see insights. And once you find those insights, you can make better decisions. And isn't that what we've been talking about all this conference is how do we make better decisions? So that's where the real value in data comes in.
Yes, so I'll start talking a little bit about why I'm so excited to work at BIMobject. And as Bodil says, data is only useful when it leads to insights. But for me, data also creates opportunities. And I'm going to illustrate what I mean here by using data. So my first example is that we have users in practically every country of the world. This leads, I see the colors are a little bit off, but the light color there should be light pink. Each country has its own preference and particularities. So for me, when I see this, I see a lot of opportunity for market research. And when I talk about market research, this is something that the US building product manufacturers can already do by comparing your products in different markets. But what we could be doing here is also to do competitor benchmarking and really leverage the fact that we're working with digital products. So if you're really gonna be lean and reduce waste, think about it as this. You can create an MVP. You can publish a product that has not been manufactured to test it, a trial balloon, if you will. And this deeper understanding of preference, this can also improve the experience of the users. So we can serve up better recommendations, intelligent suggestions, and the categorizations. My second example here is a big number. So we have roughly currently 1.5 million downloads every month. Woo, indeed. So for me, this means a big opportunity in data mining. And I don't really like this word here, but it's essentially about finding the needle in the haystack. I would prefer to call this machine learning. And here we can use the data to cluster users, cluster use, or categorize or classify stuff. So we could even think about, we could even predict what kind of project is being worked on, potentially. And whatever it may be, a residential building, a theater, whatever. But here it's important to remember that we're not in an attention economy. It's not about eyeballs. We're in an intention economy. So this will only work if we align the interests of the end users with the building product manufacturers. Finding the intention is really key here. For users, this sort of clustering or categorization or classification can mean that we can serve up packages of objects that would speed up the design process significantly. This leads me to the third example, and it's a squiggly line. This is actually number of downloading users since January 1st this year. And what I want to illustrate with this one is that large numbers means predictability. So with this sort of data, we could easily detect trends. We can see, we can call this rather predictive analytics, as has been mentioned before. And I was happy to see Florian's presentation when he talked about just-in-time delivery. I myself is a big believer in lean methods. And predictive analytics could lead us to identify hot new markets for your products. But it could also mean that we can improve your supply chain. This is just anecdotal, but if you work with us, we could potentially look at this relationship between downloads and future demand that could be really, really important in reducing waste. So for this one, I would need your help because we don't have that data. So please reach out to me, send an email to me, and let's continue the discussion. And now I'm going to hand over to Bodil, who will talk a little bit more about what's next.
Exactly. So, as I mentioned, when I introduced myself, I'm the product owner of BIM Analytics. And I fairly recently joined BIMobject. And when I joined, me together with a colleague of mine, we set out on a learning journey. Because although I have a lot of experience coming in from the data analytics perspective, I'm new to the building industry. And I'm also new to your needs. So I set out to meet with a lot of our customers to understand and meet you, to understand what are your needs, what are the actual problems that you're struggling with. And for those of you who are not familiar with BIM Analytics is the product that manufacturers of our platform is using to come in to see how their products are performing on the site. So how many downloads and so on. And one of the things that we found is that what you're really looking for is understanding who is interacting with your brand. So not necessarily who as is in the individual, although that might be interesting as well. It's more, who is it? Is it where do they come from? What kind of occupation do they have? What other types of behavior are they showing? What other type of content are they looking for? And with all of this knowledge and all of these insights of your needs, me and the fabulous team that I get to work with every day came up with something new. And this is a new dashboard, the first new dashboard in the next generation of BIM Analytics that we'll be releasing soon. And I'll walk you through a little bit of the things that we've put in here. So first of all, we're focusing on 3 different KPIs: your downloads, your total views, and the returning visitors that come to look at your products. And some of the things that we've really built in this time so that we can help you drive your insights is the ability to compare. So you see this month compared to last month. You can see the trend if it's going up or if it's going down. Because although we know that we always want trends to always go up, 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 it is also a little bit seasonal. So it's not going to be that way always. Oh, back. No. Here we go. Now you get to see it. It's wrong when you click too fast. So we've also wanted to make sure that you see how your products are performing globally. Because although you might be in a local market, primarily with your brand, and as you said, you're interested to see who is interacting with your brand, because you also want to see the potential. So we're a global platform, so you will have global users. So you will see the top countries of who is downloading or where they're coming from, but also what kind of role do they have. So are they architects? And we've categorized the roles. We have more data on the specific roles, but we've categorized them, otherwise it would be really hard to read these. So we've also wanted to invite more of you in, so more roles will actually have access to this dashboard than we've had before. This is because we believe that once you find an insight, once you see something in your data, you're going to want to share it, because by sharing it with someone else, that's how decisions actually get made. So we really want to help you with that. And now this. We've also made sure that we want to show you what your data looks like from that perspective of where is your clusters, where are the outliers. So the big bubble here, that means that there's a lot of users. Because the bigger the bubble, the more users. You can also see that there's a lot of things going on down here, where we have some categories where there's not so many views or so many downloads. It actually means that there's more opportunity there, because that doesn't mean that it can't go all the way to the right. We've also put in some very basic statistics, hard word to say, like how many product pages do you have today, and how many files that represent, and also, who doesn't want to know, what are your top 10 products? All this comes in together into this new dashboard that we'll be releasing very, very soon. And as you see, it's one view, and it's the first step we are working on, and there will be more views coming after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
you have to stay
I
for
forgot the pizza
chocolate.
boxes.
It's chocolate pizza.
Oh, thank you very
Who's got
much.
the clicker? I'll back
Put
it.
it
Thank
here.
you. All right, guys, thank you very much. So, one of the things, again, talking about sustainability and kind of maybe a little life hack that I'm going to give you is something I discovered the other day to kind of help me be a bit more green every single day. On average, I think I probably use some kind of search engine like Google or Bing, or some people still use Yahoo. Probably about 200 to 300 times a day. It is amazing how much you use search engines, especially if you in browsers today, and that uses up a lot of energy and a lot of electricity in server houses. So there's a great search engine that was released as a non-for-profit a little while ago called this one. And so far, they have planted 85 million trees through the power of search. The way it works is that you have a little ticker up in your top corner, which kind of covers where you are on the day. And about every 55 searches, they make enough money from advertising revenues to put that into funds to plant trees all over the world. So it's something that we all do every single day. It's a fantastic example of kind of a small company making a huge, huge, huge difference. Recently, after the big Australian fires, they had a special all searches on that one day, all the money is going into Australian regeneration after the bushfires. So they do lots of projects all over the world. It's basically they're using the APIs from the big powerful search engines and they're producing something new and they're just using that money that they make. So again, an amazing charity, and here's some of the examples of projects they've done so far all over the world. So when you go back to your office, change your search engine to this one. It's a really nice little life hack to basically make everything just a little bit more green in the standard activities that we do every single day. So our final speaker of today will be Hampus, so please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see if my slides are going to roll after this. Tech is always exciting. Yeah, this might be a video. I'm just going to, oh, there we are. So I'm going to tell you how, two things essentially. How climate works. That's the part where you take all the notes, are super curious, you get to know everything about carbon equivalent. It's super, super exciting. It's just like being back in high school. Exciting. And then the other part I'm going to tell you is how to drive change. And you're in an industry, construction, which has a lot of problems. You know that. And it's not that you caused the problem, it's historical problems. When you build buildings, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of waste, there's a lot of things that we can do better. And I'm going to tell you how you can do better. And I promise it's not going to be bitter medicine, it's not going to be the high school test, it's actually the second part is going to be the exciting part. Are you ready? Okay. Okay, the first part, I promise, it's going to be better than you think. Okay, okay. So, first, climate. Too long didn't read. I think you've all seen the news. Climate is a thing. Maybe it's human-made. Maybe Republican. Maybe it's not human-made. You don't know. Maybe it's a hoax. Bernie Sanders saying it's not really, like, he's trying to get elected because of it. I'm going to tell you some truths about it. So first of all, this is like all these classical diagrams. You see them immediately, and we start talking about maybe this is just a new ice age, maybe it's not, who cares, like it's complicated. And every time I see these things, I just realize, how on earth is a normal person going to understand if it's human-made or not, climate change? So I'll give you an easier chart, which is a summary of this. So this is the Mauna Luna annual CO2. So this is in Hawaii, probably pretty equal. This is how much CO2 is in the air of Hawaii. This is the temperature increase. And I don't know if you're noticing, but it feels like it's slightly connected. And I think these lines make it slightly more easier to understand, like maybe CO2 is connected to temperature. Maybe it isn't. So I'll get back to that later, but I do generally think that it seems like we're affecting the planet, and we're definitely in the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene being that we, humanity, we are the ones actually driving climate change. It's not ice age, it's not the distance from the sun, it's not American elections, some of them wish they were, but it's definitely all of humanity, and we're doing nasty stuff. So the second part is climate is extremely complicated. So when a lot of us are talking about climate change, we're talking about this little pie slice here called climate change. But the thing is, we also should be thinking about stuff like fresh water, is there plastic, about ozone, like the oceans are getting more acidious. And like the second I see those things, I realize, oh my God, you saw the previous diagram? This diagram, oh my God. And then even worse, you know what? These things are fucking connected. So it's like, oh my God, I don't have any clue how I should do it. And that gives us, a lot of us, just climate paralysis. We just go like, oh my God, this is like, I thought the stock exchange was complicated. This is even worse. And then you have another thing, which is all of these things are kind of linear and like they affect each other, so it's complicated. But then you have these even worse things, which are tipping points. So when certain things get over certain degrees, it just goes super quickly haywire. A very quick example is the north part of the globe. It's very white. I don't know if you noticed, but it is. Should be at least. And the thing is, white reflects light. You know the whole discussion, should you buy a white car or a black car, which gets warmer, which gets not? White reflects light. That's why it's white. The thing about white light is that it's all colors get back to your eyes. That's why it's white. White, combination of all colors. Black, all colors gets absorbed. All colors gets absorbed means it's get warmer. White, everything reflects out. What happens when the north of the globe used to be white, and then it largely turns darker? That means more of the heat coming in from the sun actually is absorbed. So that means that when we suddenly have the Greenland ice sheet melting, and when that gets over like 3 degrees, that means that's going to go faster. When the north of the globe, when you start getting the permafrost to melt of an Antarctica, you have all the captured methane. Kabam! And that's when you have a crazy, crazy climate effects. So when everybody's seeing like 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees, we're not talking about like the temperature of your summer vacation. We're talking about when you get to certain points, it goes boom. And if it goes boom, nothing is fun when it goes boom. I can tell you. I have twins. They were born boom. Nobody appreciated that. Twin 1 out and twin 2 out, and it was like, okay, that was unnecessary. So TLDR on this one, it's a complex system, can make us all stressed and tired. But then the thing is, then you start to look at what can we do to change it. This is where we're going right now, and up is bad. So we got to turn. The thing though is, like, you look at this is all we can do. And sometimes when I see those lists, you get even more kind of, oh my God, can't there just be a silver bullet? Can't there just like one thing and we can just pull that thing? Oh my God, there's no silver bullet. Do you know when I see this, I actually see a silver bullet in this, and that is we can all do something. If there was one thing we could do, but it's really, really hard, and it's like fusion, and it's like if fusion works, we're done. That means like all of us are just wasting our time. We should just donate all of our money to fusion research. The thing I see here is all of us can do something. And I'm not saying about like you as in, oh, maybe you should switch to a more insulated house, but where you work. We can do 4 huge things. Where you spend your money, where you like protest on the street, where you work, and what you vote. So those are the 4 things you can do. So, soon getting to the second part. But the last part is that we also need negative emissions. We need to bind carbon. Like if we just do what we do and just stop everything, we just stop like, oh, no carbon. Go, no carbon, no methane. All vegetarians, no cars, everybody just lies down, don't use deodorant. I don't know why, but all the real environmentalists don't use deodorant either. It's like, go hardcore. That doesn't help. We need to suck down carbon from the atmosphere and get it to break. How do we do that? Oh my God, I don't know. So I'll get back to that later. So if you don't remember anything from my talk, then climate change is human-made and it's accelerating. Whatever Trump tells you. It's not called freedom gases, it's called greenhouse gases. There's a need of multiple solutions, and we need to reverse, reduce, and we need to adapt. We have to realize that some things will be gone. I'm not talking about a species or anything, but some things just won't happen in the future. We just need to adapt. Okay, that was the high school part. So how do we drive change? You can vote with your money, as I said. You can vote by going on the streets on Fridays and meet with Greta Thunberg. You can vote by actually voting, but you can vote by what you do for a living. And a lot of you are super smart people who know stuff that no one else knows or are unique in your capability. Honestly, you might not feel that right now, but honestly, I tell you. I meet a lot of people, most of them are really dumb. You're really smart. So you're super privileged, you're 1% people that can actually do stuff with your job. So if you decide to go for an electric car, that doesn't matter half as much as where you work. If you work at a place that actually changes the world, that is way much more important. And I'm not talking about Greenpeace, because I think that the industry you're in, construction, is a big, badass thing. And if you don't want to work here, then please go to renewables, because you're in the second worst thing. So stay here and do good stuff. And I can tell you what to do. So how do you drive change? So this is how agricultural land was developed. Oh, sorry, this is a high school chart. I'll give you a nicer one. So the nicer one is this, is there are 2 kinds of change in the world. There's type 2 change and there's type 1 change. So this is how much you got out of output of agricultural land. That was the chart I tried to show you. So these were a lot of the developing economy getting better. And this is a lot of the developed economy. You're not allowed to use those anymore. As Rosling was alive, he would be like, you cannot say developed and developing economy. It's not really. But like, let's just simplify it now. So in this world, you have type 1 change. Type 1 change is when we make good excellent. That's what that is about. Type 2 change is when we just remove really stupid stuff. So there are 2 kinds of innovation. And usually we don't really think about these because everybody talks about type 1 as it's the only thing. Type 1 are great improvements, but they're unlikely and they're very, very expensive. They're usually the ones we tag innovative. But type 2 are eliminating bad things, and the thing is they're very likely. You can do them. Type 1, innovation. Type 2, coordination. The reason I say that is because construction is an industry where, yeah, we can do a lot of innovation, but construction is an industry where we need coordination. And that's when Carl asked me if I'd come to speak here, I said yes, immediately. 2 reasons. 1, A, yeah, you're one of the big bandits. B, BIMobject is a coordinator in an industry that if you work together, you can do massive climate change in a good direction. So let me give a couple of examples of type 1 and type 2. All of us like to talk about this. Bjarke Ingels, floating cities, bam! You can like have rice grown here and heliophytes to do the energy. It's like massive cool. Type 1 innovation. Think about the political endeavor of doing this. Think about the construction endeavor. Think about the economy. Like, this is type 1. If it works, it's amazing. We're all going to live on the sea in the future. We're all going to have our own food. There's going to be Netflix here as well, so you don't need to worry. But it's highly unlikely. If it works, it's great, but it's highly unlikely. So let's go and look at type 2 improvements that we can do. And they make a huge climate effect. So, one, what if there was a magical way to bind more carbon? Well, I mean, the thing is, cross-laminated timber, wood, let's make it simple. What if we could grow a machine that sucks carbon out of the air, and then we cut this thing when it contains all the carbon, and then we put it somewhere. We don't burn it. We just put it somewhere so it's there. People love doing this, but they like suck carbon out of the air and make like rocks. What the fuck do you make rocks for? What are you going to do with a rock? Why don't you suck down carbon out of the air, make wood, and put it in buildings? It's fixed. Building buildings out of wood is an amazing way of capturing carbon. This is a negative emission just in front of you. This is just not moving from a cement. Cement is bad. But wood is not even not bad. It's good. Because the carbon is there. As long as this building doesn't burn, it's great. The carbon stays in there. That's amazing. Modular construction? Again, super simple. What if there was a way to design buildings more on site, more just in time, build huge buildings, and get them up there quicker with less materials? Modular construction, again. Is this a huge innovation? It's a coordination problem. You could use your local suppliers, you could use like less waste and everything. Modular design, again, super simple, type 2, great for climate. Well, I don't know about you, but every time I see somebody going like, this is the way the staircase should look, and you come in, like, I build a house. And I mean, sometimes you come in there, you go like, I know this is a good drawing, but I think you can also have brains. This is the thing. There's just a stupid amount of waste in the construction industry. And like, if you can coordinate the different parties to make sure that people are not doing stupid stuff, this is massive. So, what I'm going to say, trying to summarize this second part, is construction is in a time of coordination and to make it easy to do right. And that's why when Carl asked me, do you want to come? I feel like, yes. Because BIM, and you people in the room working with BIM, this is your game. You can coordinate an instrument so that people work together to not only reduce waste, but to suck down carbon out of the air and make it fixed in buildings or less materials. And that's why I'm super happy to be here as a climate investor. So thank you very much. That was all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Hampus.
Thanks.
Okay, so it's Slido time again. So if you'll get your phones out, log in to live. We're going to have a little quiz, and while we're doing the quiz, we'll do a screen change. So right now on your phones, it should say join quiz, hopefully, on your phones. Please, someone shouts if that's the case. Yes, no, yes? No? Can we switch to Slido on the screen as well? Or maybe I've gone too far. Is everyone logged in? No. Okay, let's start again. I'm gonna restart. Terrible. Oh, these are some questions coming for later. Let's start again. All right. Ask your participants to join. Yeah, that's better. While we're doing this, you guys can grab. So log in as quickly as you can. Basically, I'm going to ask you questions on stuff which you have heard during this conference. Let's see how well you've paid attention to some of the facts and figures. We'll give everybody 5 more seconds. Quick join. I like how people. Chris Whitty's not even here. He's in the UK. He's doing this on the live stream. This is great. We done? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start the quiz. Your first question, how many sustainable development goals have been set by the United Nations? I think they've been in 4 presentations. So how many are there? How much were you paying attention by? All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Well done. To 61% of you, it is 17. So well done. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You can fact check me later. I might have got some of these wrong. You never know. All right, your next question. I put this up on a slide. So if beef creates 60 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of product, which meat only produces 5? This was on a fast-moving slide, so you may have missed it. All right. Well done. It was fish. Chicken is very close. Chicken is 6 kilos. It's very close. Lamb is actually pretty high on the amount of CO2 that is produced as a meat. Pork is in between the two. Next question. What percentage of solid waste is produced by this industry globally? I think this was mentioned in Stéphane's presentation, also in Carl's presentation as well. All right, let's have a look at the answers. It is unfortunately 40%. That is absolutely correct. We are bad people, as Hampus just said. There's so much opportunity for change. So well done, those who got that one right. This was from the presentation yesterday. BIMobject admin onboarding for US clients took on average 2 weeks to complete. What did he state has he got it down to? What amazing time has he been able to produce with his team? If you work for BIMobject and you get this wrong, that team is not going to be very happy with you. It is an amazingly, absolutely less than 1 hour. And there's carbon saving in there with time. All right. And the final question of the quiz is, Patrick showed yesterday our brand new content automation tool to create product. So how long can we now create an object and a product page? Just from a starting point of view, Marcus, come on. The first stage of enrichment. Let's call it that. And 86%, it is 2 minutes. So from an incredible amount of time down to 2 minutes. So well done. Feel very proud of yourself if you've been paying attention for the past couple of days. I think, is there a scoreboard? I've not done this before. There is. There we go. And there's a timing as well. So James G. Who's James G? Very good. Dimar, where are you? Well done. Second place time. So well done, guys. Who's Skywalker? All right, very good. Very good. All right, great. Well, thank you very much, guys. And I'd now like to please welcome back to the stage all of today's external speakers for the panel talk. Thank you very much. If you can jump back into Slido, that'd be great. Thank you. You guys are sharing a microphone, I believe? Okay. Okay. So, I like the Chris on the outside. So we're going to start off with this question. The first question from the audience is, what future challenges are you looking forward to the most to solve with building information modeling? Let's start with the contractors. And it's going to throw it over to Joakim first. So you guys are producing buildings a lot. And you touched upon timber, which obviously Hampus spoke about as well. What are you most looking forward to solve?
The productivity problem in our industry and sustainability, I would say.
Yep. Because productivity is so low?
Yeah.
Anybody want to jump on that? I mean, Hampus, I think you touched upon easy challenges, coordination, productivity. Of course, lack of coordination drives really poor productivity. So,
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that generally coordination and making it easier to do the right choice. I think a lot of times it's really hard to kind of figure out what the right choice is, because I mean I see the second question is there's so many parameters. Is it price? Is it climate? Is it delivery time? Is it construction? Oh, I mean internal parameters. So I think that there's definitely a huge opportunity I'm looking forward to see and hear you talk about is just how to help customers do the right choice. Swipe right. I mean, I think we've all tried it with other products. So why isn't there a swipe right for right in BIM? You just like construct the thing and you swipe right and it's like, just make it better.
Anyone want to pick up on that, Florian? Anything to add on about the productivity issues making it easier?
I would look on the industry side and to help them how to access target groups in the future via BIM.
I mean, and also for that, I mean, you guys are 100% involved in ongoing education, and you explained very, very well, like, things are changing so fast, what you learn today is very different tomorrow. Is it also an education issue, getting people out to understand what choices to make?
Absolutely, because the challenge is you have to not just know it as an opportunity, but understand when to use it and how to use it. And with BIM, there's actually two directions. You might find something interesting within BIMobject, but then you need to understand it, so a connection to an education course would be helpful to understand what to do with it. But vice versa, you might learn about a new technology through education first, but you have to make it easy for the designer to be able to use that. And that's where the BIMobject, if it's properly put together, makes it very simple to include that in a project.
Great. I'm going to skip to the next question, which is, are we willing to pay a higher price for sustainability as it affects profit margins? I think that's kind of, I would have never have asked that question in that way, who end up will be paying the bill. So I'm going to jump straight over to Hampus from an investment point of view. I mean, the cost of doing these things, what is that?
I think it's a really good question. And I think it's, for me, I think that one of the things I've been very done is how we've been able to brand and communicate about carbon as an emission. Emission is a very passive thing. It's like, we're driving our car and something is emitted. I think that second we convert it to think about pollution, I think it's like when we think about it as pollution, I think we see it very differently. So I would see being non-sustainable is kind of like smoking. It's like a great idea today, but you're going to die very early. So I think the price is, it's probably going to be, I believe, if anybody's seen The Expanse. Has anybody seen The Expanse, the movie, TV series? In The Expanse, they're terraforming Mars. And essentially there are two jobs on Mars. One is terraforming Mars. One is being the military, making sure that the Earth doesn't invade. I think in the future, I think 20-30% of the jobs on the planet, there's going to be climate jobs. Just they're going to be, people are going to need to work to making sure that we don't die. So I think that, is there going to be money in this? Oh yeah. I believe it's going to be one of the bigger industries to work in. I mean, there's a discussion that it's I've lost the number now because it's one of those crazy numbers. It's like a $25 trillion investment to convert cities to being green. And that's only looking at the top 30 cities in the world or something. So it's like just like crazy amounts of money being poured into trying to turn this tanker ship so that we don't die. And I think there is a very easy solution. If you don't care about climate, just don't get kids. Not because like kids pollute, but then you actually don't have to care. Because nothing's going to happen in 50 years. You're going to be able to die and still go to the Maldives. But your kids are not. It's going to be civil war, it's going to be unrest, it's going to be famine. Even if you're the most right-wing person who really, really hates foreigners, you should definitely work for climate, because there are going to be more foreigners here looking for your jobs and whatever if there's climate.
Very true.
So I would say that it is to the point where there probably won't be people who can't work with climate. It's going to be like infuming. It's going to be like asbestos were in construction. It was like, yeah, there was a time when we didn't think asbestos was such a bad thing. It is.
It is bad.
It is pretty bad.
It's still being sorted out today. I mean, we're not going to talk about asbestos, but Fred, I mean, you're making education and films which are being absorbed by millions and millions of people around the world. Like the sustainability question, and you producing around that subject, is that being a higher demand? Are people really wanting to know about this stuff now?
Yeah, I think public perception is definitely shifting. It's shifted massively in the last 12 months. There is a minority of people that you alluded to who are never going to listen, and we do get comments from certain demographic in America who have called me all kinds of things. And we have there's one guy who writes long abusive paragraphs about me, and we just click delete, and he sort of spent ages writing these things. It's quite rewarding just to delete it straight away. But I think the point about profit margins and money is where this really comes in, and I think the fact that at the moment we're not even making any money in construction, so the ability to look at other things is almost impossible. We're all just trying to survive. And we have these. We're all buying and procuring buildings based on how cheap we can get them for, and we're letting contracts to contractors and project teams where we're trying to say, oh, you want 1.75% profit. It's a bit greedy, isn't it? And what the hell do we expect? We're not investing in our built environment. We're not paying the people that do it properly. We're not putting anything into R&D in this industry, and we're scratching our heads as to why we're not building a more sustainable world. It's I think there's some great things that are going on. There's some good changes that need to happen, but I think we need a fundamental, quite big disruption to this industry to really change things. I think public opinion, external public opinion is going to be part of that. We need people to procure buildings based on the running costs, whether it's your home or your office or anything else. But until something external changes, I don't think, or we change contract forms in the industry, I don't think we're really going to.
And that we started to speak about that yesterday. And I mean, Veidekke, how much money do you make? No, that's that's not a question. It is actually about, look, you procure and you build buildings. You are, like you said, you spend 70% of your revenue on stuff that we consume and you plow into buildings. Like this is a question very much for you guys. And you guys, obviously, the client is paying, although you do build some of your own buildings, I believe, as well, for in housing. So how are you guys kind of approaching this kind of challenge on cost?
No, so there is a really huge challenge because it's, as we heard here, it's a really low margin business. And so as soon as you bring up a long-term investment, it's quite hard to get it through. So, but I would say even if we connect it to the next question, it's like even the end customer, if we have a private person who are building their homes, we see that they are willing to pay a bit more if it's a sustainable product.
I mean, the digital twin idea, getting the house on your phone as a monitoring full life kind of product, is something that we've seen. We've worked, BIMobject's worked with a couple of companies. In fact, I even did it when I sold my apartment, I 3D scanned it and then sent that to the estate agent. And the estate agent was really cross, because the estate agent was like, yeah, but I want to produce all my wonderful paper and I want to take people physically around the building because I want to show them how wonderful it is. But it's like, no, I've 3D scanned it. It's all, like, so there's this massive kind of, it's like, well, you don't, they were like, they were really cross with me. It was very, very strange. I mean, this kind of goes back to the education question, right? I mean, these new things coming in is fundamentally changing the way that we work.
But the whole thing is a micro question versus a macro question. If you look at the big picture of the cost of destroying the planet, it's enormous. Yeah. And so, yes, if you're looking at, is it worth it to pay extra to build a better building? We have to make sure as a society that we make it so it's more expensive to build poorly. Because as a society, it costs us all. And it is an education, but it's not just an education at this level. It's a large-scale education where people think that getting the cheapest building is the best way to make profit. And that's a difficult question. I don't understand personally how people don't see that as a problem.
I think it does cost us all. We need to make that story clearer.
Yes.
We have cheaply built houses that people wake up in every day, they feel uninspired. How are they ever going to go and achieve their best potential if they don't do that? We had a council housing block in London that was built cheaply that burned down and 70 people died. We have buildings that are causing 70% of global CO2 emissions. I mean, what more do people need to make that, to be told about this stuff? You know, we need to build better buildings. We build badly. We've known that for decades, but we still do it.
And we allow it.
I think that for me, I'd love to kind of view it as what if we see CO2 as child labor? Like, we say that we just, like, a lot of children are building stuff in the economy right now, and we think it's just totally cool. Like, how do we get the margins? Like, how do we increase our margins? Like, one thing is we're doing something which is obviously wrong. We have children building stuff, or whatever you think revolting, child pornography or whatever. Like, take something really revolting and put that as CO2. Like, it's not that we can think about how to increase our margins. We're doing something which is fundamentally wrong. So it's like, and there was a civil war in the US about using slaves or not. Like, before, it's like, hey, come on, a bit of slavery is fine. Afterwards, like, no, please. So I think there's going to be a time when people look back and say, do you remember when we, like, destroyed our planet? That was pretty crazy. I was like, that was totally cool with my grandparents. They were just like, yeah, I mean, burn it, whatever. So it's like, there's going to be a time when it's going to be revolting.
It's a good example because people used to say, "Can we afford to not have slave labor?"
Exactly. It's going to be like, I mean, come on, it's going to be so expensive. It's going to be white people having to build stuff. Whoa, they're so expensive. It's like, it's going to be the same thing. It's like, do you remember when you had like coal to do stuff? That's stupid.
I mean, Florian, let's jump over to you. Obviously, in the German market, I mean, we all, though some of us build our own homes, we've got public sector, we've got private sector. This kind of question, the sustainable housing, the push, the big change.
For me, it's a designer. The designer should be, the architect should be a consultant and ask the investor or consult him towards sustainable solutions. I personally had the own experience. I'm building 2 houses right now for me, my family, and I was never asked, you want to use or go for timber? And after a while, I thought about it, sustainable house building, and I said, architect, I would like to go for timber. And he was like, oh, gosh. And he was totally puzzled. And then I went to another construction company taking care of the building erection process. But it was like my education. I was interested in the topic, how to build a sustainable house. I was not asked by the consultant architect. So it's pretty much, it's us.
So we've got us kind of driving, not driving, demanding that the design world kind of go, look, I only want you to design it if it is green. But then the design is one part. Well, then we have obviously the procurement part, which brings us on to our next question, which has come from the live stream. There is, and I know about this, so there is a UK operator in the UK who is looking to start procuring based on the information that it's given. They want information to be able to make better choices, as well as the product itself. So, of course, they're going to pay for the product, but they also want to pay for the data around the product. Is that a potentially sensible business model and viable moving forward? I mean, who wants to jump into that one first? I'm gonna. Eyes are darting around. No one's jumping on this. I'm going to throw it to Veidekke because you spend loads of money.
All right. I think that I'm a little bit doubtful to this question. Okay. I think that data should be freely available to everyone. Okay. It's sort of like you don't go on Google and find your data and pay for it. It's that's my point of view. I don't know if it's Veidekke's. But I mean, it's every new business model that's challenging the industry is positive, and I think that we need initiatives like this to further our industry.
Well, Tess, it's almost like trial and error. I mean, it could be totally catastrophically wrong, but at least we know that it's wrong because at least we have kind of tried it. I mean, what else is the business... here's a broader question. Is the business model for how we pay for construction wrong? Is the way that we fee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And why is that? What is it? Because the way we fee, the way we pay for buildings. What is fundamentally the error? Who wants to jump in and kind of start that ball rolling?
I can go again.
Yeah, of course, keep going.
I mean, it's the way that we charge our customers today. Not us, but like consultants. It's usually by an hourly basis. And I mean, what incentive does that consultant have to be efficient or productive? Nothing. They want to be counterproductive because they want to make more money, build more hours. So I think that's one of the huge hindrances in our industry. So I think we should look to more common incentives, like common economic incentives for the different players in a construction process. Yep. So that's
totally agree. I mean, also we touched upon it. We had in the debate yesterday. We were talking about this about thinking about paying for buildings based on total cost of ownership. So thinking about procuring a building over 50 years. I mean, Copenhagen are kind of looking at that. And I know, Fred, that you've been doing a lot of work in the UK on the new Crossrail project and the huge capital expenditure. Are you starting to see that a lot more in the research that you're doing?
There's definitely a desire, I think, to look at these approaches where we do buy for the lifetime rather than just looking at the capital cost. But there is a deep-rooted cultural issue with the way human beings buy buildings. We want to buy them on the capital costs and get that as cheap as we can. For the vast majority of the global population, we don't look at the life cycle. We don't look at investing in the long term. There's a whole host of reasons for that. We don't want standardized buildings. Everyone wants buildings that feel unique and are special and have a degree of architectural flair in them. And there are solutions to that. You know, there's forms of modular off-site construction where you have panelized construction, so you get the abilities of mass customization and standardization. You get the efficiency with the adaptability that's needed for all the different types of sites and architectural whims that we have in the construction industry. So there are solutions around it, but I think we need quite a big shift in how people see and procure buildings. I mean, Crossrail is a great example. You brought it up. That started at £15 billion in the UK, then it was cut to 14, and now it's like 2 billion over the original budget, and everyone's saying it's 18 billion pounds, it's over budget and it's late. But ultimately, that project's going to add an estimated 42 billion pounds to the UK economy. That's never spoken about.
Yep.
It's shifting focus is going to be a huge thing. I think lots of things around, going back to the previous question, encouraging behavioural change and educating people about just how much our buildings touch us, I think is really important. That's kind of some of the stuff we're trying to do. You know, people don't realise that you got here today on infrastructure that this industry built. This conference is enabled by the building we're currently sat in. You wake up in a home. When you're sick, you go to a hospital that looks after you. Your children, we were all educated in a building. You know, these environments shape our world, and we've got to invest in them. It's the most important thing we do on this planet. I mean, from my opinion. Sorry.
No, 100% correct. No, 100% correct. And that's why I didn't interrupt you, because it was a really good point. I mean, Hampus, like from an investment's point of view and money, you just said that obviously loads of money is being ploughed into this industry. Is it the technology around this industry, or is there just a lot of interest also in just building buildings, that like money invested in the building itself? Is that an investable capital?
Absolutely. I think there's two kinds of capital. It's like one is the risk willing that wants these type 1 improvements that sort of, they're kind of betting games, like where the world I'm coming from, the world of venture, which is you put in $1 and hope that it's going to be $1,000. If it becomes 2, you actually become pretty pissed off. You want it to be 1,000 or nothing, please. And then there's the other world where, as you're saying, if we're talking about sub 5% margins, then, I mean, like any kind of innovation improvements are amazing. But there's completely different structural capital for that. EIB, the European Investment Bank, now announced, like when I was 6 weeks ago or whatever, that they're setting aside 1 trillion euros, and the majority of that is going to be in the second part. It's not going to be like innovation capital. It's going to be lending to green businesses. It's going to be structural infrastructure. So a lot of it is in shifting. And I think that if we think about who should take the long view, I think at the second time, as we start talking about business models, if we want anybody to pay extra, and they will have no incentive to do so in 5 to 10 years. It's very hard for them. I mean, as the question were previously, it's like, how do you fund it? But there are players that think about stuff in a 50 to 500 year perspective. And if you do, you're kind of absurd. If you're a city, if you're a hospital, if you're a school, if you're a country, I mean, like, this is not like a CapEx question. I mean, this bridge or building or hospital, it's going to stand there for quite a long time. And the cost of it burning down, or the cost of us having traffic disorders or anything, is massive. And that's why I think like the few commercial players that are not countries that think very long term, they're the kind of likes that are like the IKEAs of the world, who like, oh, I'm going to design the highway 5 miles north and 5 miles south of an IKEA in Shenzhen or in Shanghai. And they do, because they know if people are 10 minutes late, they're made to skip IKEA. So like they make shitloads of money on it. So I think that we have to think about who long term makes the immense amount of money. And that's usually somebody who invests in quote-unquote infrastructure. If I buy a house, I might sell it in 5 years.
So, I mean, it is a really good point. It brings us on nicely to the next question. Now, I've been to a conference in the UK where I've debated this analysis quite heavily, which was we do spend a lot of money actually in construction, in innovation. We should spend a lot more. We have these great things like the hackathons that we do. So we produce all this new really, really cool stuff. And then we go to build it, and the insurance companies go, you haven't tested it properly, we're not going to insure it. And this happens everywhere, all the time. And like, how do we go about, I mean, do you have kind of a similar issue, Florian, in Germany as well, where insurance companies, you come up with these great ideas, and insurance just goes, no, I want you to build it in the traditional way, no innovation, please.
Currently, if you try to insure your timber-built house, it's kind of hard. It's still not accepted. I mean, it's from the fire protection. It's a tick box. It's easy, but there are no real offers for the insurance companies to foster that and to support it.
So, what do you think the aim and solution? I mean, going back to kind of an education question here as well. Is it education, or is it coordination, or is it both?
It's both.
It's both. Yeah.
knowledge and coordination.
But it's also a systematic problem in our society. I've seen a lot of very innovative products that can't be used in certain jurisdictions because building code won't allow it. You're saying, well, it's being used in France. Why can't it be used in New York? Well, because it takes a long time for the system, the governments, to adapt to new technology and change, because they're afraid. And the incentives are not there for them, because if they approve something new and there's a massive failure, well, there's terrible political repercussions for that.
I mean, have you guys here in Sweden, do you have the same issues? You want to build something. Have you come across that blocker, or have you overcome it? Do you have examples of where actually you have enriched kind of the people that are paying the insurance companies, the client, go, actually, this is a better thing. You should be doing this.
Not that I heard of.
Not so far.
No.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
I mean, Hampus, on your side, is it insurance companies, or should it come out of venture capitalism?
No. I think that you see already that, for example, now after Paradise, California, after the forest fires, now the insurance companies in the US are moving the burden of planning forestry to the power utility companies, like the power line drawing companies. They were previously they were just like free of everything. They could just say, hey. But after you see a couple of transformers explode and you see like complete power outages in San Francisco City, then now the insurers and a lot of the litigators are now saying that you can actually litigate towards a utility company for for forest fires. And I can say, that's a very quick-moving companies right now, a sector trying to help utility companies plan forests so that they're at lower risk of forest fires. And there's massive amounts of drone companies and satellite companies now that are. I met a company Friday, that grew from 1 million revenue per year to 18 million in 12 months. Because all the utility companies saying, we need help, this can't happen again. And they don't want to cut more forests. They want to plan the forest to decrease forest fire risks. So I think that there will be crazy amounts of innovation, and then there's also going to be massive amounts of coordination. And I think that if in the future there's going to be a different tax codes for buildings that build green or non-green, then I think that if you build a hospital today, you're pretty stupid to build it of old classical cement, if instead of making it in green cement. And I know the problem with new cement is like, it's a new ISO code. What's the risk? Well, what's the risk? There's a carbon tax, and you're going to get 2% more taxed in the future. I think, as you said previously, 12 months ago, this was not really a topic. Now, like the last 12 months, people are, thanks, honestly, part to Greta Thunberg, thanks to forest fires in Paradise, California, and thanks to koalas drinking waters out of bikers. Now, everybody in the kitchen is thinking, fuck, what is happening? And this is something we talked about in the 70s, but now it's primetime TV, except on Fox News. So I think that people are getting aware. There's a massive risk for insurance companies insuring it. And you see banks are now not underwriting coal projects. So if you're a coal company right now, you might not get money in 5 years. And that's why we're going to see fossil fuel stocks plummeting. They're going to plummet in 10 years, not because people don't want coal or oil, because nobody wants to underwrite them. And that's just the financial system doing what it should do.
So kind of bringing that on board, and kind of from an education point of view, and it ties back in. Actually, there's another question there, which is, should we still be calling it BIM? I don't think it does really matter what it's called. I mean, Emil, you've done a VDC course recently, which is virtual design and construction. Yeah, which is it's something else. Is it about actually having a better area of education on all these subjects that we're talking about now?
I think that education, when I was in school, BIM was on the map, but it was that's what we do on the side. I think that it's changing now, and I think that digitalization will be a part of the curriculum in the schools. And if you talk about VDC, I think that right now it's something that we do in the industry as companies. We educate our people to comply to the VDC framework, as it's so fancily is called. But I think that in the future we will see schools adapting the same framework, and we will teach the same things that they do in Stanford, that Stanford came up with the concept of VDC. So I think that it will be in 5 years. It would not even be a question. No. You will learn this every day in your schoolwork, and there are educations today that focuses solely on BIM. I think that we have a colleague or you have a colleague, Magnus, that have like virtualization and BIM.
Yep.
It's
his
a
degree.
2-year course. It's perfect. So I think we're a good way there, or a good way on the road. But
There's still a long way to go.
yes, definitely.
Still a long way. I mean,
Yeah.
Fred, you touched on YouTube being trying to be the social network, which is looking at being socially responsible as well, and is obviously having a really tough time. But obviously, it is a way for us to obviously you spread your message, and we spread our message as well. Is that an answer for the future? Because we have someone over on the other end, which I'm going to go to afterwards. We're going to talk about PDFs again. But and both are valid, and it is an interesting.
Yeah, and it depends what you're trying to achieve. I think both of our approaches are completely valid for what we're trying to achieve. One is more about raising awareness, one is more about the optimum way to educate people, and they both have their place. Coming to the question, I think the big thing we need to do is really in education is get back to the why. So we spend a lot of time on the process, the bureaucracy, and the how and the what. But why are we doing this, and why does it matter? If you can get that across to people, whether they're working in the industry now, or they're at college, or they're at school, suddenly everything else falls into place and makes complete sense to them. And I actually think the BIM acronym's become a bit of its own worst enemy in a way. I think we need to, when you talk about BIM, people now think about 3D modeling and it's expensive and someone over there is going to do it. It doesn't really relate to me. If you talk about using digital tools to make the way we build, operate and live in our buildings better, more efficient, more sustainable, suddenly you get whole rooms of people listening to you, engaged, and everyone understands what you mean. I think getting the language right and pitching this the right way and appealing to people's hearts and explaining to them why it matters cuts through everything else, and then every other part of their learning just completely makes sense after that. So for me, I think that the words we use matter immensely, and the way we pitch stuff matter immensely.
I mean, Stéphane, in you're obviously delivering a slightly different type of education and a message, and it's still extremely powerful and extremely useful. I mean, do you feel that the content being produced, there is absolutely a space for both? Is it a generational thing? Is it the way that we're changing through digitization? I mean, how do you guys see it coming through?
As I was saying in my presentation, is different people are looking for different things, and it also depends what you're teaching. I love video. I love to do video courses, but there's two parts. Somebody has to pay for it, and somebody has to be willing to watch it. And when sometimes you get very technical or very micro in what you're teaching, it doesn't make a great video, or it's not really worth it. And you're also dealing with what we do with a whole range. You have people who are experts in an area, and really they don't need the first half. They just want to skip through it. They want to get to the meat and potatoes of the stuff they're getting into the final details. And it's something we've, capitalism is good and bad in different ways. We need regulations to kind of manage that capitalism. So when we create advanced courses, they are popular, but in a much smaller scale. And that's because there's fewer people who are that interested, they want to go in depth. And the people who are paying for the courses then are disappointed. They shouldn't be. But we've talked about this, there's this whole idea of how low can I bring the price, or how much money can I get by spending as little effort and money as possible. And that's not always the right model. And we need regulations to kind of push that. The regulatory framework for education, the threshold is way too low. But we have to play in that field.
I mean, Florian, coming over to you, and Fred touched upon it just a moment ago. BIM is kind of, as a word, in some cases, has become its worst own acronym.
It's spoiled in a way. But actually, however we want, maybe we should do our poll how we should call it in the future. I think it's about the sustainable value chain. That's actually what we are talking about. And here we are talking about a digital aspect of it, digital enabler of the sustainable value chain. And I think for me, yeah, you're absolutely right when you say like the term BIM is old-fashioned. It has some touchy. People are still asking, what do you mean with BIM? Is it 3D? Is it more or less? It's important to explain what it is actually. That it's not just 3D modeling. It's a whole value chain till the end of the building in a couple of 100 years.
So it still has its value, and it still has its value. I mean, the name is
my
really
personal
important.
opinion is name it however you want to, but like understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think BIM is your company, the BIM B1M. So you make a small adoption to it, and maybe that's the way to go. And
We have 2 jump-ins. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate on the abbreviations like VDC and Veidekke has been something like VDC. Something in some projects, because I think that I don't know what this is. I don't want to do this. It's digitalization. I'm not familiar with it, but once you rename it and say like, oh yeah, we're gonna work with goal-oriented object or project objectives and client objectives and see how we can break those down into stuff that we actually do in the project. That's VDC. But if you talk about it in another direction, they're more positive. So I think those acronyms are getting more stigmatized, but it's the things that we do. It doesn't have to have an acronym. It doesn't have to be called BIM or VDC. It's what we do that matters.
I would say, coming from the complete outside, I actually, honestly, a couple of months ago, I didn't know that BIM meant something. I thought the company BIMobject was, I didn't realize that BIM stood for something. So that's like how complete blank I am. But I would say that I think the name, I think that when I sort of research searches before this and listening to you, I think that the crazy thing is we don't realize that technology was everything that was innovated after we were born. Like if it's before that, it's a given. It's like nobody think about it. Calculators used to be mainly female workers sitting and doing manual work to figure out what stuff were worth and stuff like that. And then calculator became machine, and now calculator is an app on your phone that nobody really opens. So it's like the word, that I totally agree. I think we have to fill the word with a meaning. Like if we say we're BIM, I think the problem is that it's up for interpretation. And I think more importantly, BIM is a means to an end. I think, as you said, I think the more important is to talk about the end. I think it would be absurd to say, oh, we're constructing stuff, but we don't actually have any building information management. People will be like, what, sorry? Isn't building information management kind of core of building? No, we're doing this project like as we did in the old days. It's like, it sounds absurd, right? So I think it's going to be like water. We don't think about it. We take it for given. I don't think it matters what we call it, but I think we have to explain what it is, and we have to turn it into a goal-oriented thing and not a means to an end.
I mean, and I would totally agree, because I saw a conference, I think it was last year, and it was, the hashtag was BIMness as usual. It's like business as usual, BIMness as usual. It's making like, it is an everyday thing. I mean, I suppose when CAD was first introduced in like the late 80s, people were freaking out, going, oh, how can you go from a drawing board where you're so free to design something to a computer program which is quite static? And but now, because CAD is so old, so we don't even think about it. It is a standard process.
We almost need to, picking up on the point, we need to realise that how absurd this sounds to people outside the industry. I mean, I've spoken to friends and they've said, so what is this BIM thing? You tell me what it's about. It's this new way of working. We bring all the information about a project into one place that everyone can access, and we check that a building's going to work and function correctly before we actually go on site and build it. And they're like, what?
Exactly.
I'm working 60 stories up in a skyscraper and it's built the old way. Like, what the hell do you mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy to the outside world.
Yeah, I think that's touching just right at the point in the core of our problem. Because, I mean, we're trying to digitalize the process of construction, but it's so great part of the industry or of the parts of the process are still disconnected. So we're trying to put in bits and pieces of new technology and new digitalization parts, but still the processes in the way we're working and the way we procure and we do the projects and the business models around that are still the same way as 100 years ago. And getting those two together doesn't go very well.
No.
I know, and we've been trying. We've been seeing this 20 years ago. There was lots of ideas for BIM was coming out, and the whole supply chain was supposed to be digitized and work, but it never happened. And people invested and then backed out of it. There seems to be a difficulty at the very end to really get that investment and to get the education. BIM is a very open standard, which is good and bad, but it means that most BIM objects that we've ever seen is just a 3D model. And everybody says, I have a BIM object, but that shouldn't be acceptable. Just a 3D model is not enough. There's a lot more information missing.
So, I mean, that being business as usual, I mean, talking about, again, going back to kind of consumption and education. We'll skip on to the next question. And the two are kind of the same, which is talking about, you talked about wood construction, and obviously, it's carbon bricks, basically, that you're just using. I mean, is there a risk of, if we switch quickly to one material, is that really the answer to move everything to wood, or is it a mixture? We have other materials as well, such as green concrete, and steel has a long...
Steel has a massive carbon footprint as well.
Yeah,
both steel and cement are pretty super shitty. They're like the third nations in the world on carbon. So they're pretty bad. I would say the thing is that what most people don't realize, like when people look at the Amazons and saying, oh, they're burning the Amazons, or they're cutting down the Amazons, everybody believes they're cutting it down to make, paper mass or use the tip. No, they're not. They don't fucking care about the wood. They want livestock. So if we would take and cut down timber and use it for something, that's a massive improvement. So the crazy thing is there's no lack of wood. There's lack of using that wood for something, which is not burning it. And that's just the absurdity of thinking about it. This actually, if you go back to the slave labor analogy, is having slaves working for something we don't use. It's like just so completely bananas. It's like, I can't understand how slashing and burning forests could be a good idea. And it is only because you want lots of cattle. That's the only reason you want to do it. So I think there's no lack of wood. There's plenty of it. And if we just use it instead.
So again, but that goes back to the smart choice, doesn't it? It is about people knowing the right choices to make and getting the right investments.
It's interesting because, as you said about getting insured, it's like the interesting thing is in the US, the insurance companies are slightly starting to get this. In the West Coast, the big danger of climate is forest fires. On the East Coast, it's storms. So if you're building a building in the East Coast, they'd love it to do it with timber. That's a great idea. If you do it on the West Coast, they prefer not to. So, but also the interesting thing is wood burns, like this now is like the ironic me here, but wood burns actually more predictable than cement. So it's actually, for your insurance company, you actually prefer wood buildings because you can actually predict how they burn. Whereas cement buildings, they're extremely unpredictable. So you don't realize, they take longer time to catch fire, but when they actually start burning, it gets a lot worse. So the thing is, like, so many people just don't read below the headline. They don't go, I don't want a wood building because it's bad for the environment. It's like, can you please read the whole article? Can you read the whole PDF, please? Can you watch the whole video?
The education thing is huge. We've done a lot of stuff on cross-laminated timber and timber buildings and sustainable timber and all the rest of it. And without exception, we have pre-scripted responses, I'm ashamed to say. Yeah. But without exception, it's always, cutting down more forests. Always be great fun till it burns. Hope you like your house hot. And we always just have this, they haven't even watched the video, we always put in the bit about fire and char times, predictable char times, and sustainable foresting, all the rest of it. But there are some people who just don't get it. And yet there's a long way to go on educating people around timber. And you can see where people come from. Timber burns.
Absolutely, yeah. The thing is, we know how to burn timber. Like we, as in, like we can put stuff in a stove. We can, like, I've never can burn cement. Well, I can tell you, a big forest fire can burn cement as hell. So the thing is, that's why it's called CLT, right? Cross-laminated timber. Like the reason people use like CLT is people go, oh, CLT, that sounds smart. Like you could just say wood, but like then people go like, oh, wood, I don't like wood. No, but let's use CLT. So like that's why BIM or CLT is a good thing because some people just embrace it. They're like, that sounds good. So I think we just got to brand wood better. It's got a bad rep.
Florian,
but that again is education, information of investor, of private and commercial investors to tell about it.
And but also, I mean, we touched upon, you guys touched upon the new standards coming out in 22. I'm glad I didn't do a quiz question on that. I've definitely got that wrong. With these new standards again, and is it kind of the theme today, us discussing, we're going to wrap up soon, is very much similar to the theme yesterday: education, information. Those are the two major ones. And for Veidekke being a very educated organisation, is it now you just want the information about products so you can just make the right choices? Is that it's probably not your biggest problem on a day-to-day basis, but it is still a huge issue.
I mean, it's a big issue because without that information, we cannot do automation, we cannot do analysis, we cannot do predictive maintenance on our buildings. We can't do anything like that. So the product data needs to be in there and readily available for us in order for us to change the building process, be able to transform the building process. Because if we go about, like we said, the same way that we always done, it's just going to end up in the same place. It's like if you try the same thing twice, don't expect another result.
No.
So yeah, we need to change the process, and having product data available and at your fingertips is a big issue, or not having it is a big issue.
I mean, from an idea from an investment point of view as well, going back and forth, back to insurance very, very quickly. If a company was going, oh, we've got this great new process, here's all the products that we're going to put in the building. We've done all of the modeling for it. The life cycle modeling is done. The total cost of ownership is done. As investment groups, you're like, surely that is a much, much better.
I think if there's something investors likes, it's information. So it's like, it's very clear. Like, the more data, the better. It's always better. There can't be. And the thing is, this is also a very generational thing, as we talked about. Like, the thing is, as long as Jan Ole or whoever is the construction person at the end, as long as they say, I've never done this before, yeah, it's not going to be changed. But the good thing is, like, that's one of the good things about humanity. They die, and then the stuff change. So it's like it's like what they be university professors. Like, research changed one university professor 10-year funeral at a time. It's
We
like
usually say retirement, but
yeah, exactly. True. Sorry. That's politically correct. That's good.
All right. Well, look. On that note, and on ending importance about information and education. Thank you very much for the panel. Thank you very much for your questions. A big round of applause again for the panel. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Okay, so it's an obstacle course. It's a nightmare. So thank you much to all the speakers today. We're going to do one quick last Slido feedback. So we can jump over to Slido, please. And really, I want to know actually, how much have you enjoyed using Slido at this event? It's the first time we've used this technology at this event. It was a bit of an experiment ourselves. We just want some good, honest feedback from you guys on what you think, and then we can kind of like make it a bit better for the next one. We will be sending obviously wonderful surveys out. We encourage you all to obviously to do the surveys that we send out after this event. Will be fantastic. Good. I think it's worked too. It's also good if you're on live stream as well. For those of you that are watching, can also interact with us at exactly the same time. And then finally, just in one or two words, what are your key thoughts and your key takeaways? What are the things that you're thinking about? What are you going to go back to work tomorrow and discuss? You're full of knowledge. You now get to go back to your colleagues and influence them and educate them. What are the things that you're really, really thinking of in that way? And you can write anything here at all whatsoever. People are buying forests and change. So that's good. I think that is kind of really why we wanted you here, was really to kind of discuss how can we all change together as an industry moving forward. We can flip back to the keynote and I will wrap up for the day. So again, a huge thank you to everybody who has talked at this event, for you who have travelled far and wide or just walked here. A lot of us, of course, live in Malmö. I can say that we will be doing this again next year in April 2021. We will say when exactly that is. We will email you, we'll put it on Twitter, we'll put it on Facebook. We'll be doing the same event again, bigger and better. Hopefully we would have got over that little virus thing by then, so everyone can make it next year. And I think the themes that we have discussed around sustainability and how that can be achieved in our industry in a very, very simple, hopefully simple way, as Hampus did, the two different types of change and investment that we can do. We can all make small steps to make big differences. We can all save about 59% of our carbon footprint at Christmas dinner. These are all things that we can do tomorrow and carry on. The digitization of products, as we discussed right here in both panels, if we have the information, we can make the right choices. We as a company need a lot of information, and we want all of it from you guys, so we can give the AEC hackathons that we do, the tools and the APIs to build these fantastic things. So Veidekke can make the right choices. So insurance companies can make the right investments. So we need everything from you guys, because then we can basically use digitalization to really transform everything that we need to do for tomorrow. And I think the biggest takeaway from this conference, I think, is this final quote, which is from a professor at Harvard University. And it is absolutely true that the world is becoming too fast, too complex, and too networked for any company to have all of the answers. We are a community. We are 1.8 million users on BIMobject. We will be 5 million over the coming years, and all of us need to work together to basically solve the sustainability question through digitization and digitalization. And on that note, I wish you all a very safe journey home, and I really hope that I will see you all again here next year. Thank you very much.